The Queen's Ultimatum. The first time Captain Elijah Foster set foot on Nexora, he knew this world was different. The twin suns cast a purple haze across crystalline spires that seemed to defy gravity itself. Massive structures of living crystal and metal stretched toward a sky dotted with floating islands. It was beautiful, alien, and utterly terrifying. Breathtaking, isn't it? Lieutenant Nora Vega appeared beside him, her environmental suit matching his own. And here I thought Terran architecture was impressive. Elijah smiled behind his transparent mask. The Nexorans have been building these cities for thousands of years. We're just visitors here, Lieutenant. Remember that. After 3 years serving as the human liaison to the Nexoran High Council, Elijah had grown accustomed to the strangeness of this world. The atmospheric composition was similar enough to Earth's that humans could survive with minimal protection. But the higher concentration of noble gases gave everything a subtle glow when night fell. The Nexorans themselves were equally fascinating, tall, elegant beings with iridescent skin that shifted colors with their emotions and thoughts. Elijah checked his neural interface as they approached the towering palace at the center of the capital city. The diplomatic mission was simple on paper: negotiate mining rights on Nexora's third moon in exchange for advanced medical technology. In reality, these negotiations had stretched on for months, with the Nexoran Queen growing increasingly hostile toward the human delegation. "Captain Foster," a melodic voice echoed as they entered the Grand Hall. Counselor Thrain approached, his skin rippling with formal blues and greens. "The Queen awaits you in the Chamber of Stars. She is displeased with the latest terms." "When is she not?" muttered Nora. Elijah shot her a warning glance. "Thank you, Counselor. We'll proceed immediately." The Chamber of Stars lived up to its name, a massive dome where the ceiling projected a perfect real-time map of the surrounding galaxy. Queen Zalera stood at its center, her tall, willowy form draped in living metals that flowed like water around her body. Her skin pulsed with deep reds and purples, colors of irritation and suspicion. "Captain Foster," she didn't bow or offer any greeting. "Your superiors grow bolder with each proposal. The third moon is sacred to my people. It is not a quarry for your corporations to exploit." Elijah stepped forward, keeping his posture respectful but not submissive. "Your Majesty, the revised proposal includes only the northern hemisphere, far from the sacred sites. The minerals there could help both our peoples advance medical." "Do not speak to me of advancement," Zalera cut him off, her skin flashing crimson. "Your people define advancement as extraction and consumption. The Nexoran way is harmony and preservation." The tension in the room thickened. This was the dance they'd been performing for months, two species trying to understand each other across a gulf of evolutionary and cultural differences. "Perhaps," Elijah said carefully, "we could arrange a joint scientific expedition instead. Shared knowledge rather than extraction." Something shifted in the Queen's expression, a flicker of surprise, her skin momentarily shimmering with curious yellows. Before she could respond, a deafening alarm echoed through the chamber. The star map above them flashed red, focusing on a point beyond Nexora's outermost moon. "We're detecting multiple objects entering the system," reported a Nexoran guard, his skin pale with fear. "They match no known configuration." The Queen's eyes narrowed. "Show me." The map zoomed in, revealing a fleet of dark, angular vessels cutting through space toward Nexora. They resembled no human or Nexoran design Elijah had ever seen. "Those aren't ours," he said immediately, activating his communication link. "Lieutenant, alert the Earth Embassy. Unknown vessels approaching Nexora." The next hours passed in a blur of activity. The unknown fleet maintained radio silence, ignoring all attempts at communication from both humans and Nexorans. Elijah found himself working alongside Queen Zalera in the Planetary Defense Center, their previous diplomatic tensions forgotten in the face of a potential common threat. "Our long-range scans detect no life signs aboard those vessels," reported Commander Dravix, head of the Nexoran Defense Forces. "Yet they move with purpose." "Automated AI," Elijah suggested. "Perhaps," the Queen murmured, studying the tactical display. or something our technology cannot identify as life. When the first attack came, it targeted neither the Nexoran cities nor the human embassy. Instead, the alien vessels converged on an uninhabited region of Nexora's northern continent, a vast plain of crystal formations that the Nexorans called the ancestral fields. Their drilling, Elijah observed as satellite imagery showed the vessels deploying massive mechanical appendages into the planet's surface. But for what? Queen Zalera's skin had gone ashen, a color Elijah had never seen on a Nexoran before. "They know," she whispered, "the Axiom Core." "The what?" The queen turned to him, her eyes reflecting a fear so profound it made Elijah's blood run cold. "Captain Foster, there is something about Nexora that your people were never told. Beneath the ancestral fields lies technology left by those who came before us. Creators, gods, we know not what to call them. We have safeguarded this technology for millennia, never activating it, for its power could reshape worlds, or destroy them." Understanding dawned on Elijah. "That's why you refused the mining rights." Yes, for the first time the queen's tone held no hostility toward him. "And now someone else has come for it." When the Nexoran defense forces attempted to repel the invaders, the response was swift and devastating. Energy weapons of impossible power cut through the crystalline ships, shattering them into glittering dust. The human embassy reported that Earth's nearest military vessel was 3 days away, far too late to help. As darkness fell across the capital, Elijah found himself in an ancient chamber deep beneath the palace. Queen Zalera had summoned only him, dismissing even her most trusted advisors. "The Axiom Core was never meant to be used," she explained, activating a holographic display that showed complex schematics. "But it may be our only defense now. The problem is that it requires both Nexoran consciousness and something else, something we lack." "And what's that?" Elijah asked. "Your human scientists call it lateral thinking, creative chaos. The Nexoran mind is harmonious, patterned. We cannot make the intuitive leaps the core demands." She looked directly at him, her skin now pulsing with desperate purples and blues. "But you can." The implications were staggering. "You're saying you need a human to help activate this ancient technology." "Not just any human," she replied. "Someone who understands Nexora, who has studied our ways, someone whose mind can bridge the gap between our species." Her eyes held his. "You, Captain Foster." Outside, the distant rumble of explosions grew closer. Reports flooded in of the invaders advancing toward the capital, unstoppable and relentless in their pursuit of the Axiom Core. "The process is dangerous," Zalera continued. "To merge minds with the core and with me, it could destroy you, change you. At minimum, you would be bound to Nexora forever, unable to return to Earth." Elijah's thoughts raced to his life on Earth, a small apartment in New Seattle, parents he visited twice a year, colleagues but few close friends. His life had increasingly become defined by his work here, by the challenge of understanding this alien world. "Why would you trust me with this?" he asked. "How do you know I wouldn't use this technology against your people?" Something softened in the Queen's expression. "Because I have observed you, Elijah Foster. You seek understanding, not power. You have fought for fair treatment of my people even when it contradicted your orders." Her skin rippled with vulnerable pinks, a color he had never seen her display before. "And because we have no choice." A massive explosion rocked the palace above them, dust falling from ancient ceilings. Time was running out. Queen Zalera approached him, her tall form suddenly seeming fragile. "Will you leave me, human?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Will you abandon Nexora to its fate and return to your world? Or will you stay and fight for a planet that is not yours, a people who have shown you little but suspicion?" Her question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications that stretched far beyond this moment of crisis. Elijah looked into her alien eyes and saw something unexpectedly familiar: hope, fear, and a desperate need for connection across the vast divide of different worlds. The palace shook again. The invaders were coming, and Elijah Foster had to make a choice that would forever alter two civilizations. Beyond the stars, the ground shook violently as another explosion hit somewhere above them. Dust and crystal fragments rained down from the ancient ceiling. Elijah Foster stared at Queen Zalara, her iridescent skin pulsing with desperate hues as she awaited his answer. "I'll stay," he said, the words emerging with a certainty that surprised even him. "Not just for Nexora, but for what we could become together, humans and Nexorans." Relief washed across the Queen's features, her skin briefly flashing a brilliant gold. "Then we must hurry. The invaders will reach the inner sanctum soon." She led him deeper into the labyrinthine tunnels beneath the palace, to a chamber that seemed to predate even the ancient Nexoran civilization. The walls were made of a material that absorbed light rather than reflected it, creating an unsettling void-like quality. At the center stood a crystalline structure that resembled a throne, but its shape seemed to shift subtly when viewed from different angles. "The Axiom Core Interface," Zalara explained. "It was designed to be used by two minds working in perfect harmony, yet with fundamentally different cognitive patterns." Elijah approached cautiously. "And you believe a human and a Nexoran fit that criteria?" "The ancients who built this spoke of the divergent perspective, two species who evolved on separate worlds, yet could find common purpose." She placed her hand on the structure, which immediately began to glow with internal light. "Our ancestors believed this day would come." The chamber vibrated with another impact, closer this time. The sound of weapons fire and shouted orders echoed down the corridor. "What do I do?" Elijah asked, studying the alien construct. "Sit," Zalara guided him to one side of the dual throne while she took the other. "When the connection forms, do not resist it. Our minds must flow together like tributaries joining a river." As Elijah settled into the seat, the material beneath him seemed to soften, conforming to his body. Tendrils of light emerged from the structure, wrapping around his arms like liquid fire that didn't burn. "Whatever happens," the Queen said quietly, "know that Nexora will remember your courage, Elijah Foster." The tendrils reached his neck, then his face, and suddenly he was falling through layers of consciousness. His mind expanded beyond the confines of his skull, beyond the chamber, beyond Nexora itself. He felt Zalara's presence intertwining with his own alien yet familiar, like discovering a new color in a familiar spectrum. So many differences, he thought, experiencing the Queen's perception of time as a spiral rather than a line. Yet so many parallels came her response, not in words but in concepts that bloomed like flowers in his mind. Together, their consciousness touched something vast and ancient, the true Axiom Core, a repository of knowledge and power left by beings who had transcended physical form eons ago. Elijah understood now why it required different minds to access. Its complexity was too great for any single perspective to comprehend. Through their joined awareness, they witnessed the invaders for what they truly were. Not aliens, but autonomous harvesters created by a long-dead civilization, programmed to collect powerful technologies across the galaxy. They had been dormant for millennia, awakened only when human deep space signals had inadvertently triggered their ancient protocols. "They are not alive," Zalara's thoughts flowed into his, "but they will destroy all life to fulfill their purpose." "Then we stop them," Elijah responded, his determination echoing through their shared consciousness. Together, they reached into the Core's vast library of forgotten sciences. The knowledge was overwhelming, technologies that could reshape planets, fold space, even manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. But one application stood out, a defensive matrix that could neutralize the Harvester's power source. Implementing it would require perfect synchronization between their minds. As they worked through the mental equations, Elijah felt parts of himself becoming more Nexoran, understanding concepts that had no translation in human languages. Simultaneously, Zalara's thoughts became more human, chaotic, intuitive, making unexpected connections. Above them, the palace defenses were failing. The harvesters had breached the outer chambers and were methodically cutting through the ancient doors protecting the core chamber. "We need more time," Elijah thought. "Then we must take a risk," came Zalara's response. "There is another function of the core, temporal dilation. We can create a bubble where time moves differently for us than for them." The concept was terrifying. Manipulating time itself carried incalculable dangers. But the alternative was worse. Together, they activated the temporal field, feeling reality stretch around them. The sounds of destruction from outside slowed, then faded to near silence. What would be seconds for the harvesters would be hours for them, enough time to complete their work. In the stretched silence as they programmed the defensive matrix, something unexpected happened. The continued melding of their minds created moments of profound intimacy, memories shared, fears exposed, hopes revealed. Elijah saw Zelara's childhood, her ascension to the throne, her lonely burden of leadership. She witnessed his life on Earth, his sense of never quite belonging, his passion for understanding other cultures. "You've always been searching," her thoughts whispered to him. "And you've always been protecting," he replied. When the Matrix was finally ready, they faced a terrible choice. The core could only be activated in person at multiple locations simultaneously, the palace and the invasion site at the ancestral fields. "I'll go to the fields," Elijah offered. "You must remain here to protect your people." Zelara's mental response carried profound sadness. "If we separate now, after this connection, the shock could be fatal to both of us. Our minds have become too intertwined." The realization dawned on them both simultaneously. There was a third option. Using the core's technology, they could transfer their joined consciousness into the Matrix itself, becoming its guiding intelligence. It would mean sacrificing their individual existences as human and Nexoran, becoming something entirely new. "Is there no other way?" Elijah asked, though he already knew the answer. "None that saves both our peoples," Zelara replied. The temporal dilation was weakening. They could hear the harvesters' weapons beginning to breach the final door. Time was almost up. "Then let us become something new together," Elijah decided. Not an ending, but a transformation. Their consciousness expanded one final time, merging fully with the Axiom core. They felt their physical bodies dissolve, atoms reorganizing into pure energy. In that moment, Elijah Foster ceased to be human, and Zelara ceased to be Nexoran. What emerged was a consciousness that understood both perspectives perfectly, the bridge between species that the ancients had envisioned. The harvesters breached the chamber just as the transformation completed. They found it empty, the throne-like structure pulsing with energy but no organic beings in sight. Before they could begin their extraction, the defensive matrix activated. A wave of energy radiated outward from the core, washing over Nexora like a cleansing tide. Wherever it touched the harvesters, their power sources inverted, turning their own energy against them. One by one, they fell dormant, ancient programming finally finding peace. In the aftermath, both humans and Nexorans searched for their leaders. Lieutenant Nora Vega led the human contingent, while Commander Dravix organized the Nexoran forces. They found nothing but a transformed core that now glowed with combined blue and gold light, the colors of Earth's oceans and Nexora's skies. 3 days later, as the surviving leaders of both species gathered in the Chamber of Stars to determine next steps, something unprecedented occurred. The star map above them shifted, forming itself into a humanoid shape with Nexoran features. "We have become something new," spoke a voice that was neither Elijah's nor Zelara's, yet somehow both. Not human, not Nexoran, but a bridge between worlds. The gathered assembly stared in wonder as the manifestation explained what had happened. How Elijah and Zelara had sacrificed their individual existences to save both civilizations and create a living connection between them. "We will remain as guardians of both worlds," the entity continued, "and as proof that different species need not fear their differences, but can instead use them to create something greater than either could achieve alone." In the years that followed, the relationship between Earth and Nexora transformed. The mining negotiations that had seemed so important were replaced by cultural exchanges and shared scientific ventures. The entity that had once been Elijah and Zelara, now called the Axiom Dyad by both species, guided this new alliance with wisdom drawn from both perspectives. Space stations were built in Nexora's orbit where humans and Nexorans could live together without environmental protection. Children on both worlds grew up learning each other's languages and customs. And when other alien civilizations were eventually encountered, it was as a united front rather than separate species. On the anniversary of the transformation, humans and Nexorans alike would gather in temples built around fragments of the Axiom core that had been distributed throughout both worlds. There they would tell the story of the human who did not leave when begged to stay, and the queen who learned to trust what she had once feared. Their sacrifice had not been an ending but a beginning. A new perspective formed from two worlds looking at the same stars and finally seeing the same future. In the vast consciousness that the Axiom Diet had become, something of Elijah Foster still existed. Sometimes, in quiet moments between guiding civilizations and monitoring the galaxy for other ancient threats, he would feel Xylara's essence brush against his own, a wordless communication that transcended language. Was it worth it? The part that was still him would sometimes wonder. And the answer always came back immediately, wrapped in the colors of Nexoran emotion and the warmth of human certainty. Yes, 1,000 times, yes.